Aloha Friday, everybody. Welcome back to another 5 o'clock edition of your favorite Friday show. And I'm just going to say that, Brandon. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yes, sir. Yes,
But
sir.
I got Brandon Beasly with me tonight. For all of you who are chiming in, hey, just let us know where you're coming in from, where you're at. You will obviously see your name, but thank you all for joining us tonight. Brandon, thank you for taking
No
out your
problem.
Friday evening to be with me on this show. And I'm excited about talking about leadership and the purge, but there's a twist to this. So, folks, if you're
Yes,
not, if you're not up on what Brandon's doing, he's going to reveal this to you. But we're going to take a little side turn and talk about leadership afterward. But Brandon, first of all, thanks for being with me. Tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience can meet you.
right. Well, first of all, appreciate you, Enrique. Man, I know you've been booked. Man, this was like a whole year in the making, so I appreciate just being here and it's honor. But as I think my name says, Brandon Beasley. I'm an author, teacher, and overall, just trying to be a person that just sparks positivity into the world. I'm a owner of a brand, TRM, the Rebel Method. That's also the name of the new book. Uh, and That's really who I am. I mean, I'm an author, teacher, overall motivator. I think I'm a pretty good guy. I hope so.
And hey, I think so too. That's why you're on the show.
Yes, sir.
But you know what? And we had shared some time together throughout LinkedIn, throughout this last year, supporting each other, and I appreciate your support. But you wrote a book that it's kind of interesting. I want you to talk a little bit about that, and we'll highlight that at the end, give an
Sure.
opportunity for folks to get in there and purchase it. But tell me about Xenerex because it's a weird name, right? Now, nobody
Right.
just throw that out there.
Right.
And you wrote this book with a purpose, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So Xanarex is the culmination of so many books, man, that I've written or but never finished though. You know, so many books
Mm,
that I've written. I've had so many different books. I can't say the name because I may end up writing them one day. I have the ability to finish a book now, and so I think some of those books may come out. But it just, man, since I was about 18, 17, 18, I've just been trying to write books. And I would get to a certain point and I would stop, get to a certain point, stop, or I would get inspired by something else and never finish it. And so one day I show up to work one day and at working at UPS at this point in my life, still in college, and I'm like, I'm just gonna come in. I got this notebook. I'm gonna just write on my either my lunch or a lot of that. You know, if I have downtime at work, I'm gonna write on it. I'm gonna work on it every day. And so the goal was a page a day.
right.
The bare minimum I need to write a page a day. But Xanarex is inspired by everything that I enjoy. I love science fiction fantasy. So if you get Xanarex, you're gonna see monsters, you're gonna see magic, you're gonna see fire powers, you're gonna see all of that great stuff. Because I grew up, man, and I love the X-Men. I love anything Marvel, DC.
Hmm.
But biggest thing, Dragon Ball Z. That's my thing.
Right.
And so it's been inspired by all of those things.
Yeah, and for those that are Marvel fans, man, I understand it completely, right? They when you're growing up, you have these figures, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes they're real figures, sometimes they're comics, sometimes they're
Right.
TV figures. I grew up with He-Man and Voltron and all
Yeah,
these other
yeah.
things, right? So all of these figures end up, replacing some type of teaching, right?
Mm,
Whether a human took the time out to teach you or not, these
right.
characters surely did if you spend enough time in front of them. But what's intriguing is that uh, almost all of them had some type of leadership
Yes.
teaching,
Yeah.
something that would
Yeah.
help you get from point A to point B.
Right. I mean, you think about Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. I mean, that line, right? That was one of the things that inspired me as well. I mean, I think of like Stan Lee, the
Hmm.
fact that he was able to create obviously these larger than life characters, but give them real feeling. You know, Spider-Man had to deal with the death of his uncle, and he's
Right.
dealing with dual personalities essentially. You know, because
Yeah.
he's Peter Parker by day and Spider-Man by night. You know, how do you deal with that? How do you deal
Yeah.
with that duality? You know?
Yeah, hiding an identity, right? That only you
Right.
knew, and it was for the good, but nobody could, find out
Yeah.
because all your villains was like, hey, as soon as we find out who you are, your
Right.
family is getting it, right? So
Right.
much dynamic to these comics and these cartoon and TV figures that we grew up with, and I love that you bring Stan Lee out because I think about all the movies that we've seen him cameo on, right, and future movies that will probably see him as a I don't know, a high how do you call it, you know
Oh, Hopper.
a hologram, right, something that
Yeah.
is
Like
no longer
Tupac.
there,
Yeah.
but we have the technology to give somebody life forever.
Mhm.
You know, uh,
Right.
I'm sure they with all the technology they made a 3D out of him and
Right.
can put him in or whatever. But it is a sad thing to see such a figure like that created
Mhm.
entertainment and imagination for
Yeah.
all of us that grew up
Right.
in his era in one
Mhm.
way or another, and we're witnessing it with all the movies that are out.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, a good, what, 50, 60 years later, and these characters are now even bigger than they were when he made them, you know?
Yeah,
That's
mainstream.
crazy.
My
Mhm.
kids know them by name, and I didn't never buy no comic book here, but I had them
Oh,
when I was growing up.
man, I'll
They
tell you this. When I was in high school, I remember, I think Iron Man's coming out at this point. And I remember one of my friends was like, "There's this movie. It's a superhero movie, and it's called Iron Man." And now I know I'm a pretty big comic book fan, so I already know who Iron Man is. So I'm like, I said, "Y'all don't know Iron Man?" I was like, "And Thor," and they was like, "No." So years later, I mean, Iron Man is arguably the most popular one from
right,
the MCU right now. So
right,
that's
right.
crazy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Thor. That I got into. So I went into the Navy,
Mhm.
and I got into meteorology and oceanography.
Mhm.
A lot of that influence came from Thor.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I love the weather between him and Storm. Between those
Mm.
two, they
Okay.
they
Okay.
they made my childhood. And
I
so
respect that. Yeah.
when I got into an adult and I had to pick a trade,
Mhm.
a profession, I was already sold on weather. On top of the
Right.
fact that I grew up in Puerto Rico, and hurricanes and all that other stuff. So,
Right.
weather was my thing even from as a kid. So let's talk a little bit about this book and this character, right? Because you
Right.
you you talk about every book has a character, whether it's a real life person or in this case for you, Purge. Let's talk a little bit about that because that's going to segue into our leadership segment here not too long from
Right.
now. But how do you come up with that and how you include it in your book?
So the two main characters of the book is Xanarex and Purge. Thus, the name is Xanarex and the Purge of Life. What makes Xanarex a very unique book, in my opinion, is the fact that it's written from the perspective of the villain. It's written from the perspective of the antagonist. So, usually, like we'll watch a Batman movie and the Joker come in and mess stuff up, and then he leaves, and you don't really know what the Joker's doing
Right.
really until, and then Batman shows up on a scene at another place, and the Joker's scene. But I wanted to do it reverse this time.
Mm,
I wanted to do a book where we see Xanarex, because Xanarex is causing all of the problems in this book. Essentially, uh, this is not even a spoiler. His background is that he came from another planet called Carson. On this planet, his family was very poor. He's extremely strong. He's a monster and all of this thing, but
right.
his family was poor and they were pacifists. And so one day his family goes out and gets some food. And as they go get the food, they die in the crossfire of a nearby battle.
Mm,
And then Purge comes and sees, at this point, a child, Xanarex, and essentially takes him under his wing. And then that's kind of where the story goes. They create an army. Obviously, we're talking about leadership. They create an army called Death's Army. And then they start trying to conquer Carson and whatnot. But eventually, through a lot of stuff, they end up finding their way to Earth. Uh, through a lot of stuff.
and it's funny as we're talking. leadership, in this channel, it's what we talk about. But as you talk, and you you put the perspective of the reverse role, right?
Right.
And when you put that out there like that, it kind of, brung in my head, if leaders took the time to look at things in reverse,
Mm, mm,
right?
right.
The perspective of the person
Right.
versus what they see and what they're experiencing,
Right.
because that's where empathy starts.
Right.
When you can take yourself and say, you know what, let me look at it from this perspective
Right.
so that I could get a different, because it's a different picture, right?
Hmm.
You're portraying in your book a different picture, a different perspective, a
Right.
different vantage point. Now, I don't know how
Right.
many of y'all are movie buffs, but I saw this movie called Vantage Point.
Mm.
It blew me away. It
Oh.
gave literally one event 9 different vantage points.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that movie did not stop being active and so good.
Right.
So
Right.
if you've never seen it, Vantage Point,
I'm gonna check
but
it out. I'm gonna check it out.
your book provides that perspective
Hmm.
from a reverse side. And I love, because if you mention it and I think about it, man, they Marvel has a whole new era of stuff if they did it on the reverse side.
Right. 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 I mean, because my thing is, imagine Green Goblin is, messing up New York City or whatever, and you never really see Spidey until he's coming to save the day. But imagine you get to see, Osborn, Norman
Yeah,
Osborn. You get to see him what he's really up to throughout the movie, and Spider-Man is more so the background character, and you get to see even his motivations. Even you get to see those even clearer. And so
right,
that was
right.
what I wanted to do with this book.
Yeah, and that's amazing. So, folks that are chiming in, I see some people coming in, uh, and are active. Hey, let us know where you're coming in from. Let us know who you are. But we're talking about here with Brandon about his book, a different perspective, in terms of what readers are normally uh, basically exposed to.
Right.
We usually see the good side. Here we see the whole opposite side. And I was just mentioning about leadership. Where empathy starts is when you can actually see the reverse role
Right.
play out in your head, and that allows you to see a whole lot more clearer the intentions of the people. And as you just said, Green Goblin, why did he choose to do this or the other, right? And then you can, and before you know it, you may just have a Green Goblin fan.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing that one of the things in this book I wanted to show was that it wasn't so binary. I didn't want
Right,
to create the either you're a hero or villain and you're good or you're bad. I wanted to really give out some of the stuff I kind of left ambiguous on purpose throughout the book, and I wanted to give readers the opportunity to say, okay, what do you think of this? How do you think this happened? I didn't want to just impose my morals and my standards on it throughout this book because, like I said, I think me and you we could do the same thing, but for different reasons.
right.
We can do the same thing for different reasons, and that was one of the things in this book that I definitely wanted to show.
And I love that you highlight that. I was thinking, as you was talking, I was thinking about Thanos, right? Thanos, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
super villain, one snap of the finger,
Right.
and basically he's got the whole universe against him.
Right.
But he's only after one thing:
Mhm.
helping the universe out where
Right.
they're not willing to do.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm willing to do it.
Right.
And it's funny because when you talk about heroes, that's what they got in common.
Right.
They're willing and were willing to do what others were not willing to do.
Right.
And
Mm.
so when you think about it that way, yeah, half of the universe just evaporated. And there
Hmm.
were some loved ones, right? Loved ones were lost.
Right.
And but from his perspective, It's saying we got a population problem,
Yeah, you're right.
right? And I know
Right,
some good people are gonna be gone, but after this little snap of my finger,
right. We're gonna be good as a
we're
whole.
gonna be good, right?
Yeah,
And so,
right,
it was not understood, and so I'm happy that in this last iterations of movies, they kind of made that story, come and unfold, right?
hmm right,
Which is funny. Everybody was crying when Thanos snapped his finger, but nobody was crying when Iron Man snapped his finger
right,
because
right.
they
That is
saw it
true.
from the good side versus the bad side.
Right, right,
And so, what
right,
was Iron Man's intention? Right?
right, right.
He said
And the
he
thing is, those intentions are subjective. I mean, now
right,
to him, it's objective, right? It's like this
right,
is good, this is bad. But in terms of, like you said, to Thanos, it's like, listen, it's great that you guys are alive, but we, like you said, we have a population control. It's either half of you exist
right,
and that's cool, or we all exist, but eventually we'll cease to exist
right,
because
right.
there's too many.
And
And
so
so he's like, I'm about to do something that no one wants to do, but I'll do it.
right, and if you think about it, man, that's one of the elements of leadership that
Right.
we actually require
Yeah.
somebody to do something when nobody's willing to. And now Ricky's joining us from California. I'm gonna put her comment here. Thank you, Ricky. Always faithful. Uh, put yourself on the other side of the situation or in other shoes. You may
Right.
not fully understand, but it makes you think of the situation a different point of view, and that is
Right.
exactly why I love this conversation. Now, folks,
Right.
you thought this thing was one sided, right? We're gonna talk about Xanax, the Purge, and we're about to bring one of those characters into main view, right? Because when I saw your title, and the Purge of Life,
Right.
immediately when I start thinking of leadership, it's like, man, that's who we need. We need purge in our life. We
Right.
need it. And so a lot of people that see purge on the evil side, right, on the
Right.
not so good side, will run from it. But in reality, in leadership, there are some things that hold us back. I
Right.
jokingly refer to it as K factors, right? So when I say I take you from success to success, and that K is right in the middle, those K factors are what makes us not too good of a leader. And
Okay.
so that K, whatever it may represent, needs to
Mm.
be purged. So let's
Mm.
talk about purge for a little while. First, your character,
Okay.
and what he it actually symbolizes.
Right.
But then we're gonna kick it into high gear on the leadership side because purge is necessary. So
Right.
let's go with your stuff.
Okay. So Purge in the book, he is the right hand man of Xanax. He is, like I said, the one who rescues him after his family is killed. But Xanax is the most powerful being in this universe, uh, but doesn't really speak that much. So I use Purge a lot of times as the mouthpiece of
Mm,
Xanax throughout this book.
love it.
Xanax oftentimes may speak through facial expressions or one words and one liners, but Purge is the now, this is what's so interesting too. Throughout this book, there's something that's those who refuse to conquer will be conquered.
Mm,
And Xanarex learns this quote from Purge, and it sticks with him
mm,
because his family were pacifists and they didn't want to conquer anything, but
right.
yet still had to deal with the ramifications. They still were, in
Yeah.
essence, conquered.
Right.
And so that's what started really to change Xanarex. And so Purge is really teaching Xanarex throughout this book. Uh, listen, I get it. You may want to just sit back and you may want to just have peace. But I'm telling you, you cannot have peace unless you go forward and you're on the offense. And so that's why I get the those who refuse to conquer will be conquered concept. Like I said, Purge is the mouthpiece of Xanarex. Is how I use them in this book.
It's amazing because when I think about purging issues, let me just say they're issues, right? Purging
Right.
issues out of your life in
Yes.
order for you to become all that you can be.
Yes.
And I love that relationship between those two because you you didn't say that purge was the most powerful being
Right.
in that whole thing. You said that Xenorex.
Right.
Yet purge is teaching, is
Yes.
training, is
Yes.
molding. And for folks out there that are scared of change and scared
Mm.
of growth and scared of these challenges that come to us, un- unless there's some purge going on in our life. Now
Right.
let me give some props to purge here. Now,
Okay.
unless some purge is going on in our life,
Uh,
we potentially will never see the ultimate greatness out of
mm,
our life.
mm.
We may still be stuck on a philosophy
Yes.
of peace, in this case, yeah, I want peace, but we may stay stuck in peace and void the riches of what comes if we can purge some things out of it,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And so in leadership, there is a comfortability, you
Yes.
know? If a Brandon's back at UPS and Brandon didn't do nothing, I just say, you know what, Brandon's a good guy. Brandon, tomorrow I want you to wear that brown shirt, but with the gold on it, because you're gonna be a shift supervisor tomorrow.
Right.
And you're gonna be like, okay, bet that's more money.
Right.
Yeah, I gotta and probably do less because I seen them shift supervisors. They don't do nothing, right?
Yeah,
So,
chilling.
so, so I'm good. All right,
Right.
cool. You're not questioning. Hey, hold up now. Wait a minute. You're not saying, don't you got to do some training for that? The
Mm,
isn't there like a time to aren't these people over here been waiting? They've been here 5 years.
mm.
You're not asking all that.
Right.
So what happens? Brandon gets shifted into this position.
Right.
He didn't care less. He getting
Right.
paid. He working less. And so there's this comfortability once we get propelled into a position.
True.
I didn't have to do it to get here.
Yeah.
So why should I have to do it to stay here?
Mm. That process. Yeah. I
Yeah.
see what you're
And
saying.
so there is a comfortability, but it seems like in your story, Purge is saying, hey, you might be comfortable and you
Mm.
might think that you're the best you can be right now.
Right.
But let me teach you some things.
Right.
And
Right.
so
And
and
that's
so
the point. Exactly. The whole concept is that he is like everyone who doesn't want peace, who doesn't want to chill, who doesn't want to enjoy
right.
themselves. But what he's saying is you and ultimately you will be more tortured seeking peace than running from it.
Look at that.
And so that is such, that's one of the big things about this book is just going forward, going forward, going forward. There's so many things that are uncomfortable. And I tell people all the time, it's ironic. You can spend a life of leisure and then your body hurts.
Mm.
But you can spend your life torturing your body. We call these workouts.
Right.
And yet you're physically fit. You see what I'm saying? Isn't that crazy how you can torture your mind? We call that studying.
right.
And yet you become smarter. You can try to relax your mind and never learn anything, and yet you never get smarter. You don't
Yeah.
grow, you don't learn, you don't gain wisdom. So it's ironic that we have to go through these difficult processes in order for life to become easier. That's crazy.
Yeah. Hey,
Because
that's where they
exactly, we spend most of our lives trying to just, hey, I want it to be easy. I want to,
right.
and then thus when you try something, it's very difficult, very
Right.
difficult.
Yeah. Hey, that's why they so rightly said no pain, no gain. Right.
Okay, yep.
And so when you're going through life and you're trying all these different things out, and here's Ricky again. She goes, well, we need to purge our preconceived perceptions to allow new perspectives
Mm,
in and be able to see the bigger picture and a 360-degree views and become enlightened.
well
Obviously,
said.
uh, Ricky, you are learned. So, and that's exactly right.
Mm,
There cannot be any growth unless there is some change. There cannot be some change with the old. You got to shift some things around.
mhm, mhm.
And in the case of your book, there was some mind shifting that had to be
Right,
that had to occur, and some re-education,
right,
right? And I love that even happens on the flip side of a good character to a villain character,
right.
and which is funny because principles of leadership are the same. What it how you wield it is a different matter,
True.
but the principles are the same. You think
Hmm.
that you think that these let's just take somebody that's in the trade of thieving, right? They out there stealing folks,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
We don't applaud when people are out there,
Right.
being a thief, but it takes some time. It takes some
Right.
strategy. It takes some thinking.
Right.
Now it might not be the wisest thing to do
Hmm.
because you can't think about everything, right? You come into my house, you might have some other things to think about,
Hey, I'm
right?
with you. I'm with you.
But nonetheless, there's some hard work in that.
Yeah.
I saw a meme the other day, which is it was completely funny, but it wasn't. It was funny, but it wasn't one of those things.
Right. I know what you're saying.
And it said that there's been an increase in unemployment applications, and the trade has been thief. And it was like, what? It was like, how is a thief gonna apply for unemployment?
Right. Right.
And it's
And
because
that's true. Yeah.
everybody's home.
Right. True. That's
They
true.
they can't even execute their their thievery
Right.
because
That's true.
everybody's home. And so,
Right.
just a change of perspective, right? Because
Right.
yeah, it's not a trade that you want to
Hmm.
promote. It's not something that you want to highlight.
Right. But there's some
Uh,
quality about that if you want to do it well.
right.
You see, this is the one thing, man, that I really started thinking about when I wrote this character. This is even before the book was done. And I was like, because I always thought I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Hmm.
And so, I would grow up and I would watch Stone Cold or The Rock and these different characters. And I would notice when they're good guys, a good character,
Hmm.
they're great. And then when they become the bad character, all of a sudden The Rock is running away now and Stone Cold. I'm like, you know what? That's not realistic because there are certain times where you're going to meet somebody with bad intentions,
Hmm.
but he's determined.
Yeah.
He or she is determined. And I mean, they got the worst intentions in the world. They're not morally sound. They're
Right.
morally reprehensible. But they got these honorable qualities about them of determination. And I wanted to create that in this book. Like Purge goes through some stuff in this book. And though he's more, you can question his morals. It's
Right.
like you can't question his drive
Mm.
because he's going to keep coming at you regardless of, yeah, I get it. Yours is honorable, mine is dishonorable, but I'm going to keep coming at you anyway. And that was one of the things because I think that's important for people to know that it isn't, you don't always just win the fight because you think you have the moral grounds. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes you have to understand, hey, it's going to take a lot of determination, like you said, thinking. It's
Right.
going to take a lot of it, you know?
It reminds me of a biblical reference that I've often preached about, uh, and it's the devil even believes, but he
Yes.
shudders. Right? He
Yes,
shakes,
bro.
but he still
Hmm.
believes, right? and uh
Hmm.
and it's amazing how when you take a different look at from a different lens and a different perspective at a
Right.
situation, what you can derive out of it, what you can
Mm,
take out of it, because even in bad situations, even with bad characters,
mm,
there's something you can learn. And if you're always running from and
mm.
not I'm not saying entertain. I'm saying give it some time for you to pick out the nugget you got to get, because
Right.
there's always going to be some learning, whether it be good time or bad time.
Mm,
And so I love how you've unraveled that character and the perspective there, And as we're talking about purge itself, talking about, hey, it may not be what you
Right.
would yearn to be and do, but you can appreciate some of the values, some
Mm-hmm.
of the motivations behind
Mm-hmm.
and their determination,
Right.
because you could say whatever, and we all have our opinion about Hitler.
Mm.
No one.
So crazy. My mind's going there. I was already going there. Okay. With you. I was already thinking about it.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, go ahead.
You got it. Go
So
ahead.
I was like, no one outside of in my education, no one outside of Jesus
Mhm.
Christ has moved this world unilaterally
Yeah.
like that dude did. Now,
Yeah.
for all the wrong reasons, right?
Uh,
I'm not siding with him. I'm just saying that from a villain perspective,
mm,
if we had good people
mm.
be as determined as he was,
Right. Yeah.
how much would this world change?
Right.
And I haven't seen
See,
nobody.
and one of the things, like you saying, good people, and I think one of the issues is our standard of good has to rise up. Because I've noticed, I've asked people this throughout the
Hmm.
years, and I'll say, "What, like, are you a good person?" They say, "Yeah." I'm like, "What makes you a good person?" Well, I don't steal from people.
Mm.
I don't lie to people. I don't do. I'm like, those aren't actions. Good people do good things. You're telling
Hmm.
me what you do not do. Not stealing from me is an inaction.
Right,
Tell
right,
me
right.
something that you do. And you see, the problem is that we associate bad with aggressive, but we
Mm.
associate good with, I wouldn't even say peaceful, I would say harmless. And you can be good and still be dangerous.
Hmm.
Like, I've seen, there's a guy named Jordan Peterson, and he talks about this. And he talks about this concept of being harmless and peaceful. And he says if you're harmless, it's because like he's as harmless as a fly, or he wouldn't
Right,
hurt nobody.
right.
To be harmless is to not be capable of being dangerous. To be peaceful is to be capable, is to be
Uh,
dangerous,
right,
but to not do it anyway.
right,
And
right.
that's important. That's very important to
Yeah,
make sure
no,
you can be aggressive, but you control that.
I love that because uh, it's not having the capability.
Mm,
We all do, right? So I
mm,
choose, I consciously,
mm,
deliberately,
mm,
and with all forethought, I choose to do good.
mm.
And when I choose to do good, I end up being good. But I'm not good all by myself, right? I'm good because I have an example of what good looks like. And so I've chosen to follow that example. But there's still a capability inside of me to do the things that I don't want to do, right?
Right.
I was
Mm,
talking to my wife. The other day, there was a video of a lady up in New York in broad daylight. She's having to struggle with a man in a moving car
mm,
that grabbed her 5-year-old
mm.
and was about to abduct him.
Okay.
So she had to overcome uh, the strength of a man
Mm,
inside. The kid was already inside the car
mm.
and a moving vehicle. And that woman ripped that child out that dude's hands.
Right.
So she could have wanted peace all she wanted that day.
Peace was not gonna find her.
Peace was not looking for her,
No.
right?
No.
What was
Right.
looking for her was a bad day, one of those bad days no parent wants to go through.
Right.
But she had inside of her. Now, hey, there's anybody you don't want to mess with, is Mama Bear,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
you, yeah. She summoned up some type of strength to combat all three of those elements that showed up on her doorstep that day.
Right.
And she was able to go home with her child. Now, is
Yeah.
she gonna be the same lady she was before that happened? She will never be the same.
Right.
It still had an effect and will have an
Yeah.
effect on all her
Mhm.
future decision making for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Unless she's sound enough and spiritual enough to say, okay, I'm gonna put that on the back there. It happened.
Mhm.
All right. I'm gonna praise God for the rest of my life because it didn't go down like that dude wanted to do. It things
Right.
to go
Could have been
down.
a lot worse. Right.
But the capability was there. I bet you if you asked her if she could wrestle a guy tug of war in a
Right.
moving car, she'd probably like, no, I lose
In a
that
way.
battle.
In a way. Right.
But she did it.
Right. But tell her
And
what the reasoning for.
there you go. There you
Right.
go. So it was summed up because there was a reason
Mm.
that challenged her current capabilities. And her body said, oh, we could do this.
Mm.
Oh, we
Right.
could do this, right? And so both on the good side and the bad side, right? Because had that man been as determined as she, they probably would have ripped this kid to shreds, right?
Right.
The guy was not as convinced that he was able to pull this off.
Right.
So fear creeped into him, and thank God for that, because
Yeah.
those type of scenarios just throw me off. Even me,
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm looking, I'm like, what is going on, Lord? What is
Right.
going on?
Mhm.
But we're talking about determination. We're talking about the reasons behind, and we just mentioned Hitler, right? Uh,
Right.
that guy had something that the rest of the world did not.
Mm.
And at that time, he saw a void and he was
Mhm.
determined to fill that thing.
Right.
Because it's funny that a guy that had dark hair and
Yes.
brown eyes
Did not meet the requirements of the Aryan
did,
race. Right. Yeah.
he sold a bill of goods
Yeah.
and didn't even have the requirements.
Right. I mean, that would literally be like me saying all black people should be killed. Hey, but keep me alive, but don't touch
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
You know.
So and the world, at least that region,
Right.
were either succumb by fear, which
Right.
was, he, hey, you didn't abide, you died, right? It was one of those things,
Right.
right?
True. True.
Abide or die, and I'm sure somebody was walking around with a T-shirt,
Right.
and but look how far he got.
Right.
You telling me there was not one person that could,
Who was like, yeah.
in his circle that could have like, yo, hold up now,
Right.
you're a leader and all, but that's kind of like too far.
Right.
And I got a group of people here that ain't gonna let you get away with that.
Yeah.
I'm if you ask me, that's all that would have. you know,
Right. Right. Sounds easy. Sounds easy. I mean, but you think back to how slavery went. How one person could have a plantation of 50. Now, obviously, one person cannot beat 50 people, but he's not conquering 50 people. He's conquering one person 50 times
at a time. Yep.
at a time. And
Yep.
so that's all it took. And so that person, what happens is anybody who thought about rebelling figured they would have to deal with the other 49. And so they all felt separate rather than
Right.
collective.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you know, uh, and folks, we're talking about perspectives here. We're about to really dive into this purge thing because Purge is a character in Brandon's book. I want you to go and we're going to make sure that link to his book is in the comments once we're done here, unless he wants to type it in. But it'll be available for you to check that out. A different perspective in leadership, different perspective for you to look at the other side of the coin, the other shoe, right? Walk in somebody else's shoes here. And it's enlightening. But the name, just stuck out to me because there's a lot of things in leadership that I wish were gone. I wish were gone, man. I really do.
Right.
Um, but as we continue to raise the next set of leaders, some of these values that don't hold too much weight in our eyes they continuously get taught. We spoke earlier about being at ease once you get into a position without having the requirements.
Mm.
We just spoke about Hitler not having the requirements, but he was the leader of that world and
Right.
almost the entire world,
Right.
right? Didn't meet the requirement. So he was like, yo, I'm the leader. Okay, let's just make
Right.
things up. And so, as you're getting from point A to point B in leadership, you have to apply the element of purge in the sense of not the character, but the process of purging, right? And the process of purging is not something that is easy. And I'm going to give you a quick testimony on my end. There was a lot of things that I was on top of being a leader. Most of those things were not helping me out.
Okay.
They weren't helping me out as a man. They were definitely not helping me out as a husband, and they definitely weren't helping me out as a father. In 2017, I went through this purging, situation,
Okay.
and it was painful. It was painful to the point that I ended up in the hospital 3 times because my pressure skyrocketed up 200 and something. And so, I won't divulge of what it was here. I've done it before, but in the sense of I am today the man that I am because purge had its way with me.
Mm.
Now you have it as a character training Xenorex.
Right.
This particular purging event, right? Which I say event, it was at least a 3-year event, man. This thing lasted a long time
Right.
because I had so much stuff in me that it took 3 years to get it out.
Mm.
But although it was painful at the time, and even at times, I thought I was finna die. I thought it was it. And
Right.
there were some times where I actually said, "That's it. I'm done. Take me,"
Right.
because it was so painful.
Right.
But thank God Almighty that it actually took place, that it actually had its way,
Mm.
that it actually allowed me the time to redevelop. It was like a metamorphosis, if you want to say. But
Uh-huh.
had purge not come into my life and rid me of some things, I would not be even probably speaking here today. So you have the character purge training. So what were some of those things that he was training Xenorex to do outside of the mentality of peace?
Right. Well, a lot of it is decision making. A lot of it was getting out of it. Like there's a point in the book where Xanarex his ego gets in the way,
Mm,
and he accepts a challenge that he should not accept because the challenge is not on the grounds to where it was in his favor. The Purge tells him, do not accept it. And that challenge that he accepts ends up being the reason that he is captured, and then thus he eventually finds his way to Earth. That's where the book
mm.
begins. And so when Purge reawakens Xanarex 1,000 years later, it's almost an "I told you so." It's like, I told you this could happen. I told you not to accept it.
Right,
And so
right.
through experience, Xanarex had to then be like, you know what? He's right. I got caught up in the ego because I let somebody say some things to me. Because no one, like I said, no one can beat him. At least at that on that planet, no one could beat him in a one-on-one fight.
Right, right.
but he accepted a fight that was not in his favor. And so, had he just listened to Purge, it would have been a very simple. He could have continued his reign, but instead finds himself in some type of magical coma for 1,000 years. So that was one
It's
of the things. The ego,
I tell you, there's some things that will put you in some peculiar positions uh, as a person,
yeah,
but more importantly, as a leader. And for those of you guys, for all of you that are listening, you're in leadership. Sometimes the things that we are not willing to do are the things that will cost us the most. And in this case, a, you know, a coma for a very long time.
right,
But when you talk about leadership, uh, you may not see it immediately, but sometimes your people are paying that price.
yes,
And just because you're not feeling it as a leader doesn't mean that isn't there. You have to be savvy enough and you know I would say attentive enough as a leader to realize that one of your decisions, though it's not messing you up, may be messing somebody else up. And so it takes leadership, a different type of I say foresight. Your eyes have to be finely tuned to pick those things out, because
right,
most times people won't tell you that
no,
that they're suffering some pain because of you.
right, exactly. And the thing is, leadership takes. I would say it takes forms in many different. It takes many different shapes.
Hmm.
And as a father, like I have my 6 month child, and now understanding, before I didn't have a kid, I used to think what being a man was that a man is dominant, a man is the leader, and because you're the leader, everyone caters to you. Like you said, you become comfortable. And but the more I grow, the more I understand that leadership is catering to those around you. You're catering, and if you really want that responsibility, it's not a responsibility to take lightly. It's not a
Oh no.
responsibility of leisure. It's not a responsibility of a vacation. It's not a vacation.
Yep.
It's not time off. It's leadership. It's real responsibility, because now you're now responsible for not just your actions, but you're responsible when others do great or bad. So if people mess up, they're gonna look to you. They're gonna say, "Hey, Brandon, hey, Enrique." They're gonna say, "He's not teaching. He's not leading. He's not guiding. He's not giving wisdom. He's not giving correct counsel in those moments." And guess what? Guess what falls back on? It falls back on you. So if you really want to be a leader, those are some of the things you really have to worry about.
There's a difference between leader and leadership, right?
Yeah.
And leader is an assigned position.
Yep.
It's an assigned position, whether you ask for it or not. Leadership is a journey you take people
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
right? And you split it, right? The moving part there is the ship.
Right.
I'm a
True.
Navy guy,
True.
right? So, you know, you're supposed to take that position and take people somewhere.
Right.
But if you're just using that to take yourself somewhere,
Hmm.
that's where the seas get rough, right? The seas
Right.
will get
Yeah.
they're bound to get rough if you didn't think about that. But it's the journey you take people to, and that's not your journey. It's their journey. You helping them get to wherever that point B, C, or whatever it may be. You're
Right.
helping them get there through your leadership, right? So,
Hmm.
um, we're talking about for folks that are just tuning in, leadership and the purge. Taken from Brandon's book, uh, Xenorex and the purge of life, right? So it's funny how you could play with some things, and it's been a great conversation on leadership, on the difference in perspective. And for those of you that are just joining us, you can go back and see the replay when we're done here. But we're talking specifically about purging some things in a leader's life that will help. We mentioned ego. So let's talk about a couple of other things that we may like to see purged out of leaders that will, help the fold.
Mm. So I think, one thing I would say this: we have a lot of formalities in society right now,
Hmm.
in terms of, whether it's in terms of, I would say, in terms of like yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. And I typically try to respond in kind with that anyway.
Hmm.
And then every now and then you have somebody who doesn't want to adhere to those things. And the interesting thing is, I think a lot of times if you're caught in your ego, you'll say, well, I'm the boss. And because I'm Mr. Beasley, you're supposed to say yes, sir, and no, sir. You get so caught up in that. But really, you have to understand that you have to really understand people's intentions.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times they get, I would say, their worth based upon their position. And so if they come in at an entry level job, then they're not that confident in themselves. But as they keep getting promotions and more promotions, they start getting the big head. They start thinking they're greater, and you are becoming greater. You're accomplishing more. You're becoming, but you're not better than people. We're still people.
Hmm.
And I think the one thing about leadership that I try to exercise, like I said, I'm a teacher, so I have to deal with a lot of my students, is my position is a position of authority, but it's not a position of corruption. I don't need to corrupt. I don't need to feed my own ego by walking in there. Everybody be quiet because I've stepped in. I want to be in a position where when I walk in the room, they're happier to see me. I want everybody to be relaxed when they see me, not uptight, not all scared.
Hmm.
That to revere somebody is great, but you don't need to fear other people to the point where they can't even do their work on the level that they actually have the ability to do so. You see that in sports, how they have certain coaches where you might have a great player, you might have a guy that may shoot, let's say, 90% from the free throw line, but when the coach walks in, he's so uptight, he might drop down to 80,
Hmm.
70%. And because he's just so uptight, but he has the ability to shoot 90. So you have to make sure, are you speaking to be heard, or are you speaking to be effective to other people?
Yeah, it's amazing to think about the roles of leaders in group settings. If you're not creating an environment where your people are thriving,
Right.
that they're not succumb to fear because of what they may feel that they mess up with, and instead of thinking about the endless possibilities of what can be,
Right.
when they're around you, then there's
Right.
something wrong. There's something wrong. And it probably was not that moment. It was probably, if you look back a while ago,
Mm. Mhm.
that you set this tone. But if you're going to get the best out of your people, whatever environment you're projecting, because it starts with you, and then the environment that you're fostering, because you got to bring this thing up, right? Um, I've stepped into rooms where it's uptight, and I've had to recalibrate the environment,
Yeah.
put people at the right position and say, "Oh, hey, all right, now let's talk about this because I feel it. If I feel it, I know
Mhm.
you feeling it." And so,
Mm.
but a leader has to be able to do that and sense it, feel it,
Right.
put themselves in a position of the people and
Mm.
join them in that feeling, right?
Right.
Because you can't be like, "Oh, I feel that y'all are." No, no, no.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
this
It's,
thing.
it's all you guys. It's all
We
you.
all
Right.
feel this right here. So let's get this right because I can't
Right.
operate, let alone
Mm.
expect you to operate. Um,
Right.
so you have to be able to vocalize those things, and and get rid of some of the things that are, uh, I would say, antiquated. Look, today I was listening to something. Now we're talking about antiquated. Uh,
Mm.
there's this big hoopla about, not attending church, personally, like in person,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And I'm like, is the intent for you to physically be there, or is the intent is for you to learn some church, teachings
Right.
and apply them to your life?
Right.
Because we could get so bent up on norm, what you say,
Tradition.
traditions, right? Uh,
Right.
that you become so blind to the possibilities of what can be.
Right.
Because as good as a technology is nowadays,
Right.
you could be anywhere at any time,
Yes.
and,
Look at
and
this interview.
multiple,
Look at this
and
interview.
multiple. I
Right.
could this morning I could have gone to TD Jakes. I could have went over to River of Life. I could have all in one day,
Right.
you know,
True.
and
Very
and got
true.
my full. So
Mm.
and I bring that up because it happened to be a conversation this morning. Um, we have to think bigger than ourselves and our current
Yeah.
situation if
Right.
we're going to lead anyone anywhere, especially in this technology age. So, Brandon, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. How you came up with that book and your perspective there, man, I love it.
Appreciate it.
We're gonna make sure that we have that link as part of the comments so everybody can get a piece of that book and
Okay.
and sharing that revelation, because we often do not see things from the other perspective, from the other
Okay.
side. And I think your book is has done that in a way where folks will definitely enjoy reading it. But tell us, how can folks get a hold of you?
Okay.
And where's your book located? I'm sure it's on, Amazon, all that stuff, but
Right.
let us know.
Okay. So first of all, yeah, the book is Xanarex and the Purge of Life. Xanerex. Even you said we will have the link. Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. My newest book that I just made came out June 19th, so it came out on Juneteenth. Uh, is the Rebel Method, and that is my newest book. That is more of a motivational self help type of a book.
Right.
Where you can find me at is LinkedIn, which is where we got this connection from. Brandon Beasly on Instagram. I am a writer of Xanarex, and I also have a Instagram page for the Rebel Method, which is called the Rebel Method. So that's where you can find me.
Outstanding. And so we'll
And
make
a
sure.
YouTube channel, the Rebel Brandon Beasley, Rebel Thoughts as well.
Outstanding. We'll make sure that all that is part of the links here, post show. But this is we talk about. So Ricky says, is it better to be in church and thinking of fishing, or fishing and thinking of God, and how we can perpetuate the teachings?
Interesting.
Hey, it's a flip, right? You got to think about these things. And me as a minister, man, I pastored for 3 years. I love
Okay.
seeing the people at the church. But if you
Right.
ask me today, I don't know how much of them got it.
Huh.
I don't even know if any one of those people in my churches at the
You know
time
what?
are still
The
around.
world is changing in such a weird way. In the last year or so, we've had a lot of virtual teaching. So I've taught a lot of students, obviously just through a computer screen.
Right.
And I will say this: what's so weird? Many of them got more than my in person students.
Look at
And
that.
so, personally, yeah, I like that connection. I
Right, right.
enjoy being around people. If I go to a business meeting or if I'm doing anything, I would rather it be in person. But you cannot be so rigid in your thinking to the point where you forgetting what is the goal. If I am doing a if I'm doing a tutoring session,
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate goal is to teach you. How that happens, I don't care. We get so caught up in the I know if he's not in my face, then I ain't teaching him nothing. So how does that happen? How does that help anybody? Because he's not in proximity to you, close proximity to you. Now you don't want to teach? That doesn't make
Stuck.
any sense to me.
It's
It's not
it's
about
a
the physical, it's about the mental.
it's a mental cell, man. It's a mental cell that a lot of us fall into one way or another, or have been there before, and we're set free. So, Brandon, thank you so much, brother, for sharing this platform with me. Ricky, Adama, thank you for joining me, and all those on YouTube and Periscope. Thank you for being with us. This is another Aloha Friday Live coming to a close. I wish everybody blessings, and as we say in Shaka in Hawaii, thank you for being with us, and blessings.
Much appreciated.